Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Donnelly, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When allegations of potential improper pharmaceutical purchases by the VA were brought to my attention last fall, my first concern was the safety of our veterans. Could we verify that the drugs met FDA and other federal standards? Were any veterans put at risk? My next thought was about the cost to the taxpayer. Were these open market purchases totaling in the hundreds of millions of dollars or more? Wise uses of taxpayer dollars. Did the VA pay more than they should have for these drugs? And third, what steps were being taken to ensure that federal and VA rules are followed in the future, that the continued safety of our veterans is not compromised, and that taxpayer dollars are spent responsibly? And so I want to follow up on something I just heard, where you mentioned you would go and it would say out of stock, out of stock, out of stock, out of stock, and you'd be forced to go open market then. Isn't it a requirement of the contract that the supplier have these products in stock?
There are, I will actually defer to Steve for some additional comments, but there are fill rates that are associated with the contract. It's an overall global measure, but certainly the expectation is that the vendor will have these in stock. But they can't stock what nobody has, and so there are. What
does that mean?
Well, if it's a national shortage and there's just none being produced, none is going into the supply chain, our wholesaler as well as other wholesalers simply have no stock of that item.
So then, if nobody has any stock, what do you then do?
Then we will look and see if there are non-contract items available.
That's a similar product to the product that you can't obtain?
It's a generic equivalent.
Well, why can't we put that on a contract too?
We would love to have as many of those as we possibly can on contract. And Mr. Thomas alluded to some of the things that he was doing. About a third of the time it's possible, and the rest of the time it's not possible for a variety of reasons. But you're absolutely right. In a perfect world, everything we need we would have on contract, and we would simply order it through the prime vendor for delivery.
Well, I'm not even talking about a perfect world, but like a just-in-time supply chain. That's the whole idea about the VA not having to stock everywhere, is that somebody else will have that for you. You can call and then it's done. And I would think that part of the process would be, well, if we can't get A, then B is available. And you know, you mentioned that a third of the time B can go on contract, but for a variety of reasons it can't. Why would we not be able to put that? Why would we not be able to contract these other products?
I think part of that is the reasons that I talked about earlier.
If you could, get into the mic.
This is certainly a changing industry. There are generic manufacturers that are falling out of this business, that are moving their market share to other manufacturers who then can't ramp up fast enough to pick up whatever's being lacked.
But you at some point identify, here's the other product we have to get, right? And so you know that that product is out there. Is there any ongoing program with the vendor to say, hey, we need to put a contract on this product now and on this product? I mean, it doesn't come up to you in one day that this product is now out on the market. You know, what is the process for that?
Yes, sir. And what I'd like to do is give you a balanced perspective on two sides. One is that Mr. Valentino sort of keeping an eye on this whole process, evolving demands,
Right.
new drugs, how do we get positioned, and then swing over on how we do that on a going forward basis to make sure that we compete and get as many of these new drugs into the system. So, Mike, if you would start there, please.
Yeah, it is a moving target for us, and in the situation that you described with shortages, we may have one manufacturer that is in a situation where they can't ship product for one reason or another. There's an FDA action, or there's a raw material shortage, but that's not affecting another company. So our primary goal, as you've heard, is, and as Dr. Rowe has mentioned, is to get the product that we need for patient care, and using all appropriate and available.
Right. First and foremost is always make sure the vet gets what they need.
Yes, sir.
And we have to do whatever we have to do that. My biggest problem is I don't understand how we don't have some type of ongoing system that these other products are on contract as well.
We do, sir. And Jan, if you would address that.
Yeah, I don't think, Mr. Donnelly, that there's anyone here at the table that doesn't agree with you, that if something isn't on contract, because our associates here, the supplier, use our contracts.
Right.
We develop the contracts, we negotiate the prices. But if we have a drug that is not on contract, I don't think anyone at the table would sign up to, we go rogue and not use contracts. It happened, but that isn't the way it was supposed to have happened. The way it's supposed to happen is if something is not on contract, then you go to a contracting officer and put an appropriate contract in place. Now, granted, we know there were shortages. There are shortages across the nation in both our hospitals and other civilian hospitals. But in our case, we were able to get those drugs. So I think you've got I think you have a very pertinent point. Why didn't we put contracts in place? And as the Deputy Secretary has already stated, we didn't do it right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.